Hi everyone, Al the Psych here. Today I'm going to do a video mainly on a book called Bouncing Back, Rewiring Your Brain. This is by Linda Graham, published in 2013. And as always, I'll give my perspective and my thoughts about it. And of course, this is for informational purposes only. I might end up doing this in two parts. There's a lot of information. I'm just doing a summary, but there's so much. Still might take me two videos to complete this. All right, so let's start off with what I saw was important. And she says positive psychology. Positive psychology has kind of come around, I think, since the 90s, and I really like it. So positive psychology is teaching us we can use the power of new conditioning to install and sustain positive patterns of resilience and coping. So using mindfulness, non-judgmental awareness, acceptance to reverse depression, and the practice of gratitude to heal from grief, and the practice of shifting perspectives to create options. Okay, so she mentions two practices of choosing new experiences that science shows to be powerful catalysts in rewiring and reconditioning the brain are mindfulness and empathy. Okay, so mindful empathy. Here's what she's got in the book. It's our single most important tool for strengthening the functioning of the prefrontal cortex. Okay. So we're talking about the thinking part of the brain as opposed to the limbic system. Okay, so research shows that blocked or underdeveloped empathy or self-empathy markedly derails resilience. So if I have a tendency to beat up other people in my mind, in my thinking, this can ultimately come back to haunt me. Okay, so it's a good reason to work on some of these rewiring techniques. If I'm working on mindful empathy, trying to develop that, I may want to check and see if I also need to work on self-empathy. Am I beating myself up? And so I might want to, and like I said at the beginning of the video, sometimes I throw my own perspective into things, and that's what I'm doing here. I may want to spend a couple of days monitoring and documenting what I might be saying to myself in terms of beating myself up. Okay, so that's going to be important. So, empathy requires a capacity called theory of mind. This is the ability to both to know what someone else is feeling and thinking, and to recognize that their thoughts and feelings could be different from my own at the same moment. And I used to assess this particular area a lot when I was assessing students to see whether or not they were on the autism spectrum, because typically students on the autism spectrum have some issues with theory of mind. So, like if you were deficient in theory of mind, you might have no problem coming up to me and say, "Boy, you've got a big nose." Okay, maybe I do have a big nose, but it's not something that normally, in pleasant conversation you're gonna say. So, and the students that were on the autism spectrum were often working with SLPs, speech language pathologists, so they would practice on pragmatics, and they would practice what's appropriate to say and work on social exchanges, things like that. So that's just a little side note on theory of mind to give you a little bit more texture to what it is. Now, the key to reconditioning is holding two contradictory experiences or memories in awareness at the same time. Okay, so this is a state known as simultaneous dual awareness. And to intensify the focus of the positive memory while remaining aware of the negative memory, we have to choose to rewire. So, when we're doing this, we intensify, to restate, we intensify that focus on the positive memory. But we're also aware of that negative memory. And this can take a lot of practice. You know, it's challenging at first. Sometimes what you're doing is you're actually switching back and forth. So you're thinking of your positive memory, and then you switch back to your negative memory. Positive memory, negative memory, and then, you know, eventually, you know, there's a little bit of a kind of like a Venn diagram effect. The idea is always refresh that positive memory, strengthen that positive memory, let the negative memory kind of fade away. So eventually there can be a simultaneous awareness then of the two memories. So this creates simultaneous neural firings that allows two memories to reconsolidate together in a new network. That's taken from the book. And this actually sounds a lot like what Bandler from NLP fame, Neuro-Linguistic Programming fame, wrote in his book, Get the Life You Want, dated 2008. And I'm going to probably do a video on that book and really kind of zero in on this part, because it's really important if we want to start going through the actual technique of rewiring. Okay, so reconditioning, rewiring can be used to resolve trauma, and the fact of the memory will still be there, but the feeling of the trauma is no longer encoded in the brain to trigger distress. So, and I've talked about this actually in videos that I've done on trauma. Now, my recommendation is, you know, you start small, you know, with small negative experiences before tackling difficult trauma. And I mentioned that in previous videos. Sometimes what can happen is if you're bringing up negative traumatic events, you can get re-traumatized. All right, so if you're going to work on this, holding, you know, two simultaneous memories at the same time, you know, initially switching back and forth, positive, negative, start with, you know, something very small on the negative side and learn how to do it. Okay, again, I always say this, if you're dealing with traumatic events, it's probably best to be working with a therapist on that. Okay. Now, more notes. Loving kindness practice involves the repetition of phrases of well-wishing through several categories of people. And, you know, you kind of start from easiest to, you know, to more difficult. So typically it begins with well-wishing for ourselves, typically. And I think I've actually talked about this in my video regarding anger. So you work on imagining good things to happen to people. And, you know, you start off with, okay, you know, the easy ones, the ones you love, you know, your kids, your parents, your sisters, brothers, whoever, close friends, you know. Then it's just, that circle just starts kind of expanding a little bit. Now it goes to friends, and then acquaintances, you know, people that you've met but were pleasant. And then it goes to people that are maybe just neutral in your life. And then you get to people that, well, you know, kind of rub you the wrong way, but you're still sending out in your mind, this loving kindness, repeating these phrases of well-wishing, whatever phrase you might want to come up with. And you get to people that really bug you, and you still wish them well. You may even get to the point of, uh, wishing people well who are criminally involved, which would be kind of a, maybe a hard sell at first, but when you start at a certain point and then you take little micro steps, it's amazing when you look back and it's like, oh, I'm at this point. I started way back there. I never thought I could get to point Z, but I started from A and I just took one step at a time. So it can be done. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here. This is just going to be part 1, and I'm going to do part 2 in my follow-up video. Okay, so so look for that. All right, thank you. Oops.